there is no way the fourth one can be worse than this. There's no way.
Famous last words, right? After slowly grinding my way through the Dead Rising series, we've finally arrived at the last installment. Dead Rising 4 caps off the franchise by bringing back Frank West. Good thing he's covered Wars, because we're gonna need every ounce of expertise for what's coming. What makes Dead Rising 4 interesting is that it honestly shouldn't even exist. The studio behind the series at the time, Blue Castle, took a huge gamble during its early development. They wanted to reimagine the entire formula. Between creative fatigue, market stagnation, and a little bit of trend chasing, the team was ready to break away from the classic DR style. They'd literally been making Dead Rising games since the studio was founded, so it made sense they wanted to shake things up. Their solution? A more serious, stealth-focused Dead Rising inspired by The Last of Us. Oh, and they decided to start making this game without getting any prior approval from their publisher. Capcom. Yep, that Capcom. Later, Blue Castle pitched this moody, grounded, dramatically different version of Dead Rising, and Capcom Japan absolutely hated it. They didn't just reject the pitch. They told them to revert back to the traditional formula and refused to give them any extra development time or money. That left the devs with about a year and a half to build an entirely new Dead Rising from scratch. They got to reuse some assets and mechanics, but largely, it was from scratch. It was a full-blown development dumpster fire. If you want a deep dive, Matt McMuscle's What Happened series covers this beautifully. But don't rush off just yet, because for better or worse, we've got to review this thing.
Aren't zombies great? All they do is eat.
What the hell?
Dead Rising 4 takes place 16 years after the first game, and we catch up with Frank West, who's in a bit of a rut. His fame from reporting the original outbreak has long since faded, and he's now making ends meet by teaching college classes. That is until one of his students, Vicky Chu, begs him to help with a story she's chasing. Frank begrudgingly agrees. Huge mistake. Her story involves a volatile private military contractor called Obscurus, and to make matters worse, Frank ends up being implicated in crimes he didn't expect. And then Vicky takes off the second things get heated. Everybody just keeps fucking with Frank, trying to keep him from making his money.
I could break these cuffs.
You can't break those cuffs.
Frank's not about to let his name get dragged through the mud, so he heads back to the town of Willamette, Colorado, the setting of the first game, to clear his good name, stop a new outbreak, and maybe kick Vicky's ass for being mean to us. What she did was not nice.
We appreciate your cooperation.
That's the setup. So how's the narrative? In a word, forgettable. It's just not good. The story feels completely uninspired. Every Dead Rising game is revolved around government cover-ups, terrorism, and eccentric weirdos causing zombie outbreaks, and I was really hoping this one would break the mold. To the game's credit, Dead Rising 4 does add some interesting lore. You learn more about the origins of the virus, the difference in strains, and a few other universe details. But that's a small consolation when the main narrative is boring as hell. Forgettable is the word that kept ringing in my head. If it weren't for the recap at the end of every case, I might have literally started forgetting what I was doing while I was doing it. Maybe the ending can save it.
Keep your eye on the prize.
Nope, the ending's straight garbage. I've heard that the DLC bundle in the complete edition of the game, called Frank's Big Package, nice, fixes the ending by extending it. But I didn't bother. I didn't play it because I hate when a game releases the real ending as a DLC. It's the definition of a cop-out. And honestly, the $6 I paid for this game when it was on sale already felt like too much. They weren't getting a cent more out of me. Just like Dead Rising 3's DLC situation, once the credits rolled, the only thing I wanted to experience with this was the uninstall button. The story didn't land at all, but maybe the gameplay fares better. Okay, the story isn't very good, but I expected that. At least my friends and I can chop up zombies together while playing through that. What was that? There's no co-op? They're making a complete what out of themselves? One of the most mediocre things you've ever seen? What the fuck did you guys do? I can tolerate a lot of things, but no co-op in Dead Rising?
No.
Alright, let's calm down for a second here. Can I still play with my friends in any way? Alright, there's an objective-based horde multiplayer mode. That's cool, I guess. But is the mode fun?
No, not really.
If I didn't have the context, I'd assume they tried to fail when making this game. We're off to a rough start, but it's fine. The first Dead Rising didn't have co-op, and that game's still solid. Maybe Dead Rising 4 can pull it off. Let's give it a shot. Now, before I lose my shit completely, let's talk about some of the good stuff. There are 3 different difficulty modes, with the Blackest of Friday providing some real challenge. The weapon selection? arguably the best it's ever been. The combinations are absolutely ridiculous, and the ranged weapons are more accurate and pack a solid punch. You've got throwables that can blow things up in all sorts of crazy ways. Even better, each weapon category gets its own inventory wheel. That means you can easily switch between weapons, food, and throwables, without having to juggle everything in your inventory. Frank is basically a walking armory now, which is fun in its own right. And don't forget the exosuits. These things are a blast. They boost your damage and speed, and while they're temporary due to an energy bar that depletes with use, they're balanced well enough to make them fun without making you feel invincible. Plus, some weapons can only be used while wearing these exosuits. It's almost like being in a mini Gundam, and I'm here for it. Oh, and did I mention the lobster crossbow? We're living like Larry out here.
Observe.
But that's where the positives end. Now let's talk about the bad. First off, all the character and personality has been completely drained from this game. The core mechanics that made Dead Rising stand out have been nerfed or straight up removed. Remember the timer that created tension in the previous games? Gone unless you're playing Frank's Big Package. Nice. The pressure to race against time and the meaningful decisions you need to make in order to get to the end? Lost. Now it's just another zombie game. There are still survivors and safe houses, sure, but the quest lines for them barely exist. You'll bump into a survivor while you're walking around, save them in a couple seconds, and then they're gone. Yeah, the more you save, the more you can buy in your safe house. But here's the thing. You can buy everything you need. Weapons, health items, magazines, clothes, you name it. This makes the world feel less like a sandbox and more like a linear path. Why explore when I don't really have to? You think a few collectibles, audio logs, and taking pictures of shadows are going to convince me to keep playing? Speaking of pictures, let's talk about the camera. At first it's fun taking goofy selfies, gaining PP, and all that, but then you realize the gameplay devolves into a repetitive loop. Go to an area, take pictures, kill enemies, repeat. That's the entire game for 12 to 30 hours, depending on how much of a completionist you are. And if that wasn't bad enough, they had to keep those stealth mechanics from the game's rejected early build. Why? I honestly don't know. They're useless, and don't really fit the style of game we're playing. What else? The AI is so brain dead you have to get right in front of the enemy for them to realize you're there. The worst part? Watching enemies clip through walls and walk in place for an eternity. The game's development was clearly a mess, but it doesn't change the fact I had to play through it, and it was terrible. Also, there are way too many human enemies with guns. There were large sections of this game where I felt like I was playing a subpar third-person shooter, as opposed to an open-world zombie action adventure. Now, despite all that, the game didn't actually make me angry until I saw what they did with the psychos. And that, my friends, is where you really lost me.
What the fuck?
They're not called psychos anymore. They're maniacs. And they're basically stronger enemies with health bars. That's it. No cutscenes, no unique mechanics. You wouldn't even know these guys were supposed to be special if Dead Rising 4 was your first game in the series. This is a perfect example of how DR4 lacks personality. I was hard on the psychos from Dead Rising 3 in my video, but after playing 4, I have to eat my words. Dead Rising 3 is far superior, and that's saying something. What a disaster. Everything feels unfinished, uninspired. Like I said, the whole thing's a mess. And I hate to spoil the next section. This carries over to the presentation as well. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. You changed Frank's voice actor from Terrence Rotolo to Ty Olsson. Shocking. I know. But the ironic part is, I didn't even mind. Ty Olsson does a decent job emulating what an older Frank West might sound like. And while I don't think the game does Frank's character any justice, that's not on Ty. It's the writing's fault. The writers really try to reduce Frank down to a bumbling, angry caveman. The only thing they got right was managing to get a laugh out of me here and there.
What the hell are you talking about?
This is one of your students, isn't it?
Ooh. I think you...
Whoops.
But hey, we're not here to talk about the story. We're talking presentation. And guess what? It's just as bad as everything else. The Christmas theme is fun, and the stereotypical holiday aesthetic is nice. There's even this creepy cel-shaded opening cutscene that was creative and set the tone pretty well. Too bad none of that creativity makes its way into the actual game. Somehow the color palette is more muted and uglier than Dead Rising 3, and the facial animations actually got worse. Oof, it's rough. The visual issues don't stop there. You can tell this game wasn't fully optimized before release. There's constant pop-in when running through zombie hordes, and despite having relatively modern hardware, I couldn't get rid of this flickering during cutscenes. I tried editing around it until now, but at this point, I need you to witness the assault I had to endure on my retinas.
Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! Look at it!
I tinkered with every setting trying to fix it, but my friend has this game too, and he experienced the same flickering. so I'm pretty sure it's a problem with the game and not my build. Just add it to the ever-growing list of problems with this disaster of a game. And the visual issues keep piling up. Some of the combat animations for melee weapons look so unnatural. Frank looks like a Kryptonian from a Zack Snyder movie. Jesus Christ. I haven't seen a game that needed more TLC in my life. It got so bad that they kind of just start reusing lines.
What do you want? 30 minutes, off the record.
What the hell are you doing, Vic?
Commander, I found this civilian messing around with one of our computers. Yes, sir.
All right, Miss Chu, you can ask your questions. Lieutenant, she's coming with us.
What are you getting yourself into, Vic?
Is this amateur hour? God, this game's presentation is so bad. It looks like it was edited by me.
What the hell are you doing, Vic?
And the audio. Don't even get me started. As much as I started to vibe with the Christmas music, it didn't save the bad voice acting. In fact, I think I'm about to hear one of the worst reads ever. Quick, someone stop them before—
Applauding his death!
You think you're a leader? You're just a lunatic!
At least it's over. I'm sure the experience is better in Frank's big package, nice, but I'll never know. What a shame for the last numbered entry in the series. I'll give credit where it's due. The folks over at Blue Castle did manage to make a game that's technically playable in a window of time that shouldn't have been possible, which is nothing short of impressive. They even managed to sneak in a few glimpses of enjoyment while being rushed to the finish line. But with all that said, the game's just not good. What did my friend say at the start of this review?
There is no way the fourth one can be worse than this.
Well, guess what? It is worse than Dead Rising 3. And that's saying a lot because I really didn't like Dead Rising 3. But at least there was an attempt to keep the personality the franchise was known for. DR4, on the other hand, Blue Castle turned in a game that I can't recommend under any circumstances. Dead Rising 4 is the kind of game that leaves a trail of disaster in its wake, and sure enough, that's exactly what it did. I'm bummed that I finished playing through this series, but honestly, I'm not bummed that I'm done with DR4. It's an experience I'll always remember as a mismanaged, unfinished mess. That's it for me. And as always, thank you for your time. And Merry Christmas!